Hey everyone, Steve here at Brass Horse Business Ed, and this is part 2 of the Paycheck Protection Program Loan Forgiveness Application step-by-step video series. This one is specifically for sole proprietors and single member LLCs and other businesses where there's just owners and no other employees. You probably saw this form and thought, oh my gosh, it's 11 pages. It only took me 4 pages to apply. That is true. I am a business professor and a small business owner myself, so I'm making these videos to help you as I've learned this myself, and always learn a lot from the comments, so please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. I hope you watched part 1. Part 1 addressed the different documentation that you're going to need to submit with this loan and or to keep for the next 6 years. Several members of Congress are talking very, very seriously about making some moves to address some shortcomings in the PPP. And specifically, some of those things are extending the terms of the PPP from 2 years to longer, extending the amount of time you have to spend the funds from 8 weeks to something longer, and also to change the ratio, the 75-25 ratio, more favorably, especially to business owners that are in high rent districts. So for those of you that are in some areas where you're paying a lot of rent and the 75-25 ratio didn't particularly address your needs, you're afraid about forgiveness there, there's some serious talk about that. So I would encourage you to hold off from submitting this application for as long as you can, but please check with your lender. Check with your lender to see if they have set a deadline for when you can submit this loan forgiveness application, because it could change. Okay, so let's pause here and let's use a sample business. Let me tell you the assumptions about that sample business. In this sample business, Bobby Smith is a sole proprietor with a pest control business. He had $60,000 in net income on line 31 of his 2019 Schedule C. Now, this would be an average monthly income of $5,000. So he used that number as he was allowed to when he applied for the PPP, and by multiplying that by 2.5, he received PPP loan funds, or Paycheck Protection Program loan funds, of $12,500. Let's assume he received those on Monday, April the 13th of 2020. He usually takes his draw out every Friday, and he transfers that from a business account that he has into his personal checking account. All right, so let's get to it. The forgiveness application allows you, if you have no other employees, this forgiveness application allows you to omit some big chunks. So as you've already heard, this is pretty cumbersome application, and you are claiming owner's compensation replacement. That's based on line 31 of your 2019 Schedule C. So let's go straight to the application. If you don't have it already, you can find the links to that down below. If you'll go ahead and get that and print it out, you can follow along. I'm going to be filling it out on the screen. Okay, you're going to notice on the first page that you have all the definitions about what the different terms mean. I encourage you to read these carefully, including the part about the alternative payroll covered period. This allows you to change the window for your payroll to be lined up with how you normally take your payroll cycles, how you normally make your payroll cycle. And starting on the second page are the various instructions for each of the lines. We're going to be walking through these. It also tells you some things about the eligible payroll costs if you have employees, but we're not going to be dealing with those. Okay, the third page actually begins the Paycheck Protection Program Loan Forgiveness Application form, the part that you're going to fill out. And for the purposes of our example and to be expedient, I'm just going to leave the top part right here undone for now. This is where we would fill out everything. If we were Bobby Smith, we would fill out everything about our business, including the PPP loan number and the lender number. So we're going to start with the PPP loan amount. And remember, what I told you was that under our assumptions, his loan amount was $12,500. And his loan disbursement date was Monday, April 13th, 2020. Now, because you're a sole proprietor, you're the only employee in your business, I know we said we don't have any employees, but for your purposes, you're going to place a 1 right here. And it's okay if you want to write in parentheses self. And again, you had 1 at the time of the forgiveness application, unless you fired yourself, which you may have thought about doing during this whole quarantine. Okay, let's assume that Bobby Smith did not take any EIDL loan advance. He read the whole thing and he heard everybody's horror story, so he decided not to do it. He takes his draw weekly on Friday, so we're going to check that box. And his covered period starts on the date that he got his disbursement, which is April 13th, 2020. And if you'll notice, if you count out 8 weeks from there, then his covered period ends on June 8th, 2020. Okay, but his alternative payroll covered period allows him to move the 8 weeks or the 56 days to the date that he takes his first draw. We said that he takes his draws on Friday. So what he's allowed to do is go from this Monday that he received the funds to Friday. So that's going to be actually Friday, April 17th. And we're going to extend that off 8 weeks, and that's going to be Friday, June 12th. Okay, he did not receive $2 million, so definitely do not check this. And we get to move down here. Okay, this is where we're going to enter our payroll cost. And to enter our payroll cost, we're going to have to go down to PPP Schedule A, line 10. So we're going to have to go down a few pages. Okay, now what we don't need to do is we don't need to go down to the worksheet, the PPA Schedule A worksheet, which comes down all the way to page 9. It looks like this. And we don't need to fill any of this out. There's plenty of instructions telling us that we don't need to fill this out. We just need to go back up to Schedule A. So here's Schedule A. We're actually on page 6. Now, because you are a sole proprietor with no employees, then you actually can skip every line until you get down to line 9. When you get down to line 9, you're at compensation to owners. And this is where you're going to use, this is where you need to be very, very careful. On page 4, it explicitly reads that you're going to use 8 weeks of owner's compensation, not 2 months of average monthly compensation. So if you'll remember, Bobby Smith had $60,000 of annual net income on line 31 of Schedule C, which would be $5,000 a month if you divide 60,000 by 12. And he used that to apply for PPP. However, that's not going to be the case. Now, this guidance was given by the Treasury Department on April the 15th, and it's very, very important. And I know it'll be frustrating if you use 2 months of average income to apply for your loan. That was about 7.7% higher than you can claim for forgiveness. Okay? So, if there was more than one owner for this business, then you're going to use an Excel spreadsheet. That's the last sentence right here. Then you're going to just create a table because you're filling this out for the business that received the PPP loan. But in our case, Bobby Smith is the sole proprietor. So here's what we're going to do. On this line right here, what we're going to do is we're going to take line 31 of our 2019 Schedule C, and we have to use that, and we're going to divide by 52 for weekly and multiply by 8 weeks worth. And if we do that, the number is 9231. Okay? Now notice that that's $769 less than the $10,000 that would have been 2 months worth. Okay? That could create some problems later. On line 10, then we're just going to add everything above that, which is the same number. Okay, now this is important. Under full-time equivalency reduction calculation, you're going to check this box and you're going to enter 1.0 on line 13. and you don't need to do anything else here. There's nothing else to add to PPP Schedule A. And remember this line 10 number? You're going to need to use that now. Go back to the loan application form. You're going to go up a couple of pages. Okay, so here we go. We're going to use that number from line 10, and that's 9231. On lines 2, 3, and 4, you want to enter the applicable amount for those items. Now, as mentioned in the previous video, this is for the 8 weeks of covered period, not the alternative covered period. So this is going to be from April 13th through the date that we used for that, which was Monday, June 8th. This is starting the date that the funds were dispersed. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to consider Bobby's utilities. His utilities could include electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet access. Again, watch the Part 1 documentation for this. These are utilities paid during the covered period, and they must have been in place on or before February 15th, 2020, and they also must be expenses that you could have taken on a Schedule C. Doesn't mean that you did take them in 2019, but you could have taken them. You would have been entitled to take them. So the normal business expenses. Okay? Now in our example, let's assume that our sole proprietor has no rent on a building, but he does have loan payments on a Sprinter van that he uses exclusively for his business. Now this is real property for the business, so we're allowed to use the interest on those payments. Let's say that each loan payment had $300 of interest, just for simplicity, so 2 of those were $600. And he's got transportation costs of an additional $500 a month, and this was listed as a qualified utility in the Treasury Department Federal Register Bulletin that's referenced throughout this application. I covered this in a previous video, so you could look that up. So he's got $500 a month for those 2 months. That's another $1,000. He also pays $100 per month in a cell phone, so that's another $200. And between the $1,000 and the $200, that's $1,200. Again, I'm keeping this pretty simple. Okay, he has no other business or lease payments. It's important to remember that we cannot deduct these expenses from our taxes when we file in 2020 because we're being compensated for them now. So remember that and potentially make a note of this in your files. Okay, for line 5, we didn't need to fill out anything on the Schedule A line 3, so nothing there. And then we're going to add all of these amounts. And if we add all of these amounts, it comes to $11,032. Okay, this is where we go back to line 13 and use that full-time equivalency reduction quotient. All right, we may have felt like firing ourselves, may have even had a meeting about it, but hopefully you didn't fire yourself, so we get to enter a 1.0 here. This is from line 13 of Schedule A. All right, so we're going to multiply line 6 by line 7, which is just simply repeating the number, 11,032. And in line 9, we're going to insert our PPP loan amount, which was $12,500. Okay, for line 10, we're going to take line 1 and we're going to divide it by 0.75. This is to determine if we used at least 75% on our payroll. And so when we do that, then the number comes out to $12,308. Okay, now this is the part that I fear, might change if these Congress members on both sides of the aisle are able to make any changes successfully. So this is the reason why I think this could potentially change. You may want to hold off on this unless you find out that by doing these calculations, everything would have been forgiven anyway. And if everything was forgiven anyway, then go ahead and submit it. Okay, so we're going to now, for line 11, take the smallest of these 3 numbers, whichever one is the smallest, and it's actually line 8, which is 11,032. And this is what Bobby Smith is able to have forgiven. You'll notice that if we do that, that is actually $1,468 less than he received for the loan. And so what that means is that this difference is going to be now an unforgivable portion. He has 2 years to pay that back at 1%, and currently he has 6 months of deferred payments from the time the loan was dispersed. So he's got 6 months to begin to make payments on this. Okay, so now we're going to just go down to page 4, and we're going to make sure that we have met all of the requirements. And as we do, we're going to initial each line. And you're just going to do this all the way down through as you read and carefully understand that you have met each of these requirements. And then Bobby's going to sign right here, print his name, date it, give a title as owner, and that's it. Listen, please remember that your lender may have additional requirements beyond these. They may have additional forms. They may have this form in an electronic format that you fill out online. So be prepared for those. Look for those things on your lender's website. Also, as I mentioned before, be ready to hear that there could be some changes made by Congress on this program, and those changes may be beneficial for you, especially if you run through this form quickly in a draft and you find that you didn't have all of your funds forgiven. Something could turn in your direction in the coming weeks, so you may want to hold off on submitting this to wait and see if that does in fact happen. All right, I hope you found this example useful, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. It really, really helps. And would you do me one more favor, and that is if you found this very, very helpful and you belong to any associations or groups made up largely of sole proprietors or single member LLCs, business groups, mentoring groups, chambers of commerce, etc., consider sharing this on either Facebook or on some other format that could get this out to people that you associate with. Unfortunately for me, but fortunately for you, you don't need to watch any more videos in this series. You're done, because you had a simpler form to fill out. But I still want to hear from you, so please let me know in the comments down below how you and your business are doing, any kinds of changes you had to make to your business during this coronavirus, anything you learned, anything that would be helpful maybe for other business owners, that might be good. And I hope to look forward to your subscription, and I look forward to maybe having some helpful videos in the future for you and for me and for everyone else.